Imagine meeting a man with no house, no money, no possessions, no social status, and no fear. A man who slept inside a giant clay jar. A man who mocked the most powerful philosophers of his age. A man who wandered through the streets carrying a lantern in broad daylight, claiming he was searching for an honest human being. And when the conqueror of the known world stood before him and offered him anything he desired, this man looked up and said, "Move, you're blocking my sunlight." That man was Diogenes of Sinope. More than 2,000 years later, his life remains one of the strangest, most provocative, and most unsettling stories in the history of philosophy. Because Diogenes did not merely criticize society, he declared war on every illusion human beings build their lives around: wealth, reputation, power, status, comfort, and even civilization itself. His question was simple: if everything you own can be taken away, were you ever truly free? This is the story of the philosopher who chose poverty over power, truth over comfort, and freedom over everything. Diogenes was born around 412 BCE in the prosperous Greek colony of Sinope, located in present-day Turkey. Unlike many philosophers who emerged from hardship, Diogenes likely grew up in relative comfort. His father, Hicetius, worked with the city's mint, handling coinage and finances. But everything changed because of a scandal. Ancient sources tell us that Diogenes and his father became involved in an incident concerning the defacement or debasement of currency. Whether they forged coins or became entangled in a political conflict remains unclear. What is certain is this: Diogenes was exiled from his home. He lost his status. He lost his security. He lost everything. For most people, exile would have been a tragedy. For Diogenes, it became liberation. Years later, he would reinterpret his punishment as a calling. If society accused him of corrupting currency, then he would spend the rest of his life exposing a far greater corruption: the false values of civilization itself. Money, status, luxury, honor, success. To Diogenes, these were counterfeit currencies that people traded their lives for, and he intended to destroy their value. After his exile, Diogenes traveled to Athens, the intellectual center of the Greek world. This was the age of giants. The legacy of Socrates still shaped philosophy. Plato taught in his academy. And a controversial philosopher named Antisthenes was preaching a radical message: virtue is the only true good. Everything else is unnecessary. Diogenes became obsessed. According to legend, Antisthenes initially rejected him. He insulted him, ignored him, even threatened him with a stick. Diogenes refused to leave. Holding out his head, he reportedly said, "Strike me, for you will find no wood hard enough to keep me away while you continue to teach." Eventually, Antisthenes accepted him. But Diogenes did something extraordinary. He didn't simply learn cynicism. He transformed it into a way of life so extreme that even his teachers seemed moderate by comparison. The word cynic comes from the Greek word meaning dog-like. Originally, it was an insult. Diogenes embraced it. Dogs, he argued, live naturally. They do not care about social status. They do not pretend. They do not chase wealth. They do not hide behind masks. Humans, on the other hand, spend their lives performing for one another. They sacrifice freedom for approval. Diogenes wanted to become as free as a dog. He owned almost nothing. He begged for food. He slept wherever he could. Popular legend says he lived inside a giant storage jar. At one point, he carried only a wooden bowl. Then he saw a child drinking water with his hands. Diogenes immediately threw the bowl away. "A child has beaten me in simplicity." Every possession was a chain. Every desire was a prison. Freedom meant needing less. The less he needed, the less the world could control him. Most philosophers wrote books. Diogenes wrote nothing. His philosophy was his life. Every action was a lesson. Every public scandal was an argument. He ate in the marketplace because society's rules about where one could eat seemed arbitrary. He slept in public because he rejected the idea that dignity depended on privacy. He intentionally embarrassed himself to prove that shame was often artificial. People called him mad. He believed society itself was insane. He once walked backward through crowded streets to mock people for mindlessly following one another. He interrupted lectures. He mocked politicians. He insulted the wealthy. He ridiculed social customs. Everything humans took seriously became a target, not because he hated people, but because he believed they were asleep, and only shock could wake them up. Among Diogenes' favorite targets was Plato. While Plato explored abstract theories and ideal forms, Diogenes distrusted intellectual complexity. He believed philosophy should solve real problems, not create new ones. When Plato defined a human being as a featherless biped, Diogenes reportedly plucked a chicken and carried it into Plato's academy. Holding it up, he announced, "Behold, Plato's human. The story may be exaggerated, but its meaning is clear." Diogenes despised empty definitions disconnected from reality. To him, wisdom was not found in books. It was found in living. He once mocked scholars who studied natural phenomena while ignoring their own behavior. What good is understanding the stars if you cannot understand yourself? We live in an age overflowing with information, but starving for wisdom. Diogenes saw that problem more than 2,000 years ago. One afternoon, Diogenes walked through the streets carrying a lit lantern. People laughed. Children followed him. Curious citizens asked what he was doing. Diogenes answered, "I am looking for an honest man." It was one of history's greatest acts of public criticism. He wasn't searching for a missing person. He was exposing a missing virtue. According to Diogenes, society rewarded appearances instead of character. People pretended to be wise, pretended to be moral, pretended to be successful. But authenticity was rare. His lantern illuminated a truth that remains uncomfortable today. Human beings often fear honesty because honesty threatens the roles they play. Diogenes wanted something deeper. A life without performance. A life without masks. A life aligned with nature rather than public opinion. By the time Alexander the Great arrived in Greece, he had conquered vast territories and commanded enormous armies. He could order cities destroyed. He could shape the fate of nations. Yet even Alexander wanted to meet Diogenes, because power recognizes something extraordinary when it sees it. Alexander had conquered the world. Diogenes had conquered himself. The famous meeting took place in Corinth. Diogenes was resting in the sun. Alexander approached him and declared, "I am Alexander the Great." Then he offered the philosopher anything he desired: wealth, protection, status, influence. Diogenes looked up and replied, "Stand out of my sunlight." That was all. No request, no fear, no gratitude, just refusal. Alexander was astonished. According to later accounts, he walked away and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." In that moment, two visions of greatness stood face to face. One man sought freedom by controlling the world. The other found freedom by needing nothing from it. Only one of them was truly impossible to conquer. At some point in his life, Diogenes was captured by pirates. He was sold into slavery. For most people, this would have been the ultimate humiliation. Diogenes remained calm. When asked what skills he possessed, he answered, "I know how to govern men." He reportedly instructed the auctioneer to sell him to someone who needed a master. Eventually, he was purchased by a wealthy man named Xeniades. Even as a slave, Diogenes refused to think like one, because he believed slavery begins in the mind. A person addicted to approval is a slave. A person controlled by fear is a slave. A person dependent on luxury is a slave. Physical chains matter less than psychological ones. Diogenes taught that freedom does not come from circumstances. It comes from independence, and independence begins when you stop needing what others can take away. Diogenes died around 323 BCE. Ancient accounts disagree about how. Some claimed illness, others suggested food poisoning. A few offered more legendary explanations. What matters is not how he died. What matters is how he lived. Coincidentally, some traditions claim that Alexander the Great died in the same year. One conquered empires. The other conquered desire. History remembers both. But only one proved that happiness cannot be bought, inherited, or seized by force. Diogenes left behind no books, no institutions, no wealth, no monuments. Yet his ideas shaped generations of thinkers. His philosophy deeply influenced later cynics and eventually helped inspire Stoicism. His message survives because the problems he attacked still exist. We still confuse wealth with success. We still trade authenticity for acceptance. We still seek happiness in things that cannot satisfy us. And we still fear the judgment of strangers. Diogenes forces us to ask difficult questions. How much of your life is built around impressing people you barely know? How many possessions actually own you? How many desires are truly yours? What would remain if status, money, and reputation disappeared tomorrow? Diogenes believed that most people spend their entire lives chasing chains and calling them freedom. His solution was radical simplicity. Need less, want less, pretend less, live honestly. Because the person who needs nothing cannot be manipulated. The person who fears nothing cannot be controlled. And the person who lives according to truth becomes richer than kings. Perhaps that is why, after more than 2,000 years, the old philosopher with the lantern continues his search. Not for an honest person, but for anyone courageous enough to become one.